Okay, so we can formally start now. Nicholas is here, Sharima is here, and I am the first speaker, and after Mr. Bongo. So he is parking up, and he will be with us shortly. Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, assalamu alaikum. This is the 105th edition of our Zoom public meeting. For 104 unbroken continuous weeks, we have been here every single Sunday. In the past 2 years, 2 months and 1 week, we have featured over 337 presenters from all parts of the world speaking on 104 topics. We wish to sincerely thank all of you who have contributed in whatever way to the success of this ongoing pan-Indo-Caribbean and pan-Indian diaspora project. Our chairperson today / tonight is Nicholas Maharaj from Trinidad and Tobago, a brilliant young man who works with us at our ICC office almost every day in the week. He has a BSc degree in political science from the University of the West Indies and is a final year online law student at the University of London. Nicholas, welcome. Please chair the meeting.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much, Dr. Mahabir, for that warm welcome. It is always indeed my pleasure. Good night, good morning, and good evening. Namaste and assalamu alaikum to all of you, depending on the time zone in which you live, because there are always people joining us from all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a weekly forum being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center, a legally registered research and publishing company operating since 2010. In order to continue this weekly program, and to make it better and bigger, we are asking you to kindly give us your suggestions as well as a donation. Please contact Dr. Mahabir for details. Our moderator this evening is Shalima Mohammed, the co-director of this Zoom platform. She's also a business teacher and researcher from Trinidad and Tobago. She obtained her master's degree in business psychology from Franklin University in the US. Shalima, welcome. Please take over from here.
Thank you, Nicholas. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Namaste and welcome to all of you. We're especially pleased that you could join us on this very rainy afternoon in Trinidad and Tobago. We wish to join Suriname today in its commemoration of Indian Arrival Day, which regretfully is not a public holiday there yet. So 149 years ago today, June 5th, 1873, a ship named Lala Rook arrived in Paramaribo carrying the first batch of 399 Indian indentured laborers. The Lala Rook docked after 3 long months of sailing from Calcutta. In tribute to these pioneers, our IT manager, Robin, will play an appropriate song. Robin, please.
एक दिन बाबा माँ से हमसे होए गयो 2-3 बात रोए रोए बोले लगे वो आपन अब आप लोगन सुन बाबा के कहानी। आपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गए सुरीनाम में आए। आपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गए सुरीनाम में आए। हो कलकत्ता में रहत रही हम, काम काज कछु नाही। इधर उधर घूमत रहलिन निज साथिन के समुदाय। देव योग से एक दिन कर काथी गैल भेटाए। बोले चले सरनाम लवंदा, सारा दुख कट जाए। आपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गैले सुरीनाम में आए। आपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गैले सुरीनाम में आए। कहलन का हुआ है करना पहले देव बताए। मौका पाकर हर काटी तब बोल उठा मुस्काई। सुखी बहुत सरनाम देश है धनी से तधिकाई। फुलवारी और बाग बगीचा सफा करन को पाई। आपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गए सुरीनाम में आए। आपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गए सुरीनाम में आए। अरे सुन के हमारे खुशी के बचवा दहलिन नाम लिखाए। पप्पा मैया भाई को तज कर तुरते दीन सिधाए। बैठिन बीच जहाज में जाके भारत को बिसराए। कई महीनों के बाद पहुंचली हम दीपू महाई। आपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गए सुरीनाम में आए। आपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गए सुरीनाम में आए। जहाजे बतिन वहीं से परनासिन में जाए। सब बल खाकर कतली से देकर लोगी में जिसे बधाई। देख यहाँ के जंगल भारी जीरा गई घबराई। फुलवारी के धोखे में अब पर गए महाबलाई। अपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गए सुरीनाम में आए। अपन देश छोड़ के बचवा गए सुरीनाम में आए।
Thank you very much, Robin. So the Lalaruk was the first of about 64 ships which brought over 34,000 Indian laborers between 1873 and 1916. And what that song explained is really the narration of Baba, who felt cheated in leaving Kolkata for Suriname. The song says that they left their country in search of a better life and came to Suriname to live happily. In Kolkata, which is where they came from, there was no work. They were wandering from here to there. The total community was experiencing apathy. And then a friend came with news of opportunities in Suriname. They asked for details and was told it was a beautiful country, full of agricultural fields, gardens, and cleanliness everywhere. So thinking of the future of their sons, they signed up at the Delhi office and set sail. So on the journey, they had little food, which was sometimes rotten. And when they landed, the deep forest that they saw made them shiver in fear. The rains were intolerable, and so was the heavy work for meager pay. They left Bharat in search of a better life and came to live happily in Suriname. And that song just told us what their experience was. I want to say thank you very much to Shri Vijaya Kumar Kamar, who is with us in the audience, for translating that song for us on short notice. Thank you very much, sir. So ladies and gentlemen, onto today's program. This meeting will take the form of a panel discussion, and I'll ask you, unless you have to speak, kindly mute your microphone now. The icon or symbol is at the lower left corner of your screen. Just click on it until you see a diagonal line on it. This meeting should not exceed 2 hours. And our topic today is smoking out ganja controversies. What the Indians call ganja is referred to as kush, marijuana, or cannabis. A couple of weeks ago, The Senate in Trinidad and Tobago approved the Cannabis Control Bill, which seeks to legalize and regulate the commercial use and sale of marijuana. The bill also allows for the establishment of a Trinidad and Tobago Cannabis Licensing Authority to issue licenses for the cultivation and distribution of marijuana for medicinal and religious purposes. We're a little late in Trinidad and Tobago. Jamaica relaxed their laws in 2015. The Caribbean has been blessed, though, in more ways than one. Ganja is grown abundantly here, but illegally. In the agricultural sector, the Muruga scorpion pepper shot into the international spotlight as the hottest pepper in the world, and that's grown in Trinidad and Tobago. The native soil has also produced the world-renowned Trinitario variety of cocoa that are used by international manufacturers to flavor their chocolate products. Jamaica's Blue Mountain coffee is also very popular, well known. Today, we will address how ganja came to the Caribbean, whether we have the best conditions to produce a unique variety of ganja, and how this plant has been used to the benefit or disadvantage of people. And our first speaker today is none other than the director of this weekly Zoom program, and that is Dr. Kumar Mahabir. He's a medical anthropologist, a university lecturer, and author of the bestseller, Medicinal and Edible Plants Used by East Indians of Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Mahabir, you may go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me share my screen first. So that should be it, yeah. So let me get it enlarged. Okay, this went too far. Right. So thank you very much, Ms. Shalima, for that warm introduction. The title of my presentation is The Historical and Cultural Context of Ganja in the Caribbean. You will see I've put the color green to match the ganja and the color leaves. And I am not going to talk about the medicinal aspect. I may just mention it briefly. That will be left for the other speakers, 4 other speakers who would follow me. So it's a part of our legacy. Just as how we have brought from India song, music, and dance, we have brought ganja as well. So it's the legacy not only of Trinidad and Tobago, but the Indian diaspora. And most of what I am going to talk about will come from a book that this book I have co-authored. This is the cover here, co-authored with Drs. Mahin Gosine and Deepak Malik. That book was published in 1995. Now I have a few chapters in that book, but of interest to us today is a chapter on marijuana as ritual and medicine in the Caribbean. It is 17 pages long, and it is single space. So ganja has taken a long journey. Look at the distance. It came with indented immigrants going around Africa. Actually, this journey is longer than the journey which the slaves, enslaved Africans took to the West Indies. But of course, their journey was torturous. So this is the journey. And I would start by saying that ganja is one of the oldest plants known to man. It is one of the oldest cultivated plants, and it is the oldest domesticated plants that was used for fibers, food, and medicine. Now, there is a lot of theories, but most of the researchers have found that the cannabis, which is another name for the ganja, is a native of Persia, as well as the northern parts of India from when our Indian indented immigrants came. It is mentioned in the Vedas 2,000 years ago, documented 2,000 years ago, but all of these scriptures were in the oral tradition. The Atharya Veda specifically, and it is mentioned for its magical and medicinal properties. Now, I still have to do some more research on this to identify what were the remedies that marijuana was prescribed for to treat some of these ailments. I have done a book, which is a bestseller, Medicinal and Edible Plants. This is about the 5th edition. I have been doing a new a reprint or maybe another edition every 2 years. And in the book, I have found that when I spoke to the elders in the community in Trinidad and Tobago, they told me how they use the leaves, shoots, and seeds and so on for internal as well as external use. And they told me that it was used, that they use it for diabetes, bronchitis, high blood pressure, and arthritis. Now, my doctor told me that there is no cure for arthritis, so maybe this might be something to explore. Ganja is associated with Lord Shiva. And I want to dwell on this picture and this image for a while because, and it shows one of the reasons why Hindus hold Ganja to be a sacred plant, a herb, because they believe that it was brought by him from the Himalayas mounting for human use and enjoyment. Now, if you look at this image carefully, you are going to see the mountings. It's nature behind him, right? Trees, plants, no building, nothing like a city. And if you look at his eyes, right, you can tell something about him being in a deep meditative state. So he's always depicted in this ascetic way, meditating, and equally important is that he has a dreadlocks. And if you look at the bottom right of him, that's to your left, you are going to see that he has a plate of vegetarian or ITAL food. He doesn't eat meat at all. And it is believed that he resides under a marijuana tree, if you want to find him. So had marijuana not been made illegal by the government for almost a century, I am sure in Trinidad and Tobago as elsewhere, in addition or instead of the tulsi plants, which all Hindus have near the Jandi, where they light the diya and so on an evening during the Sanja hour, they would have had a marijuana plant. I am positive about that. So there is only the tulsi tree and a nearby neem tree and a nearby mango tree and so on, but the tulsi tree is almost always by that Jandi. In India, there are the sadhus who use marijuana. They cultivate the marijuana. They see it as a sacred herb, not to be trampled upon, not to be destroyed willy-nilly. You know, you take care for something that you believe to be sacred. And they use, and I'm sure before marijuana was outlawed in Trinidad, the pundits and the ritualists would use the stalks and the flowers and so on in the Hawan Kun to make that sacrifice, those offerings. And while that is being done, they would chant their mantras and do their japa and so on. Now, the Muslims also in India use marijuana. The fakirs, they believe that the use of ganja made it easier to open a way to get spiritual insights into divinity. So marijuana was really used for spiritual uses to connect with that, to a higher level with that supreme being. The mystic Sufis of Islam and the sadhus of Hinduism use a ganja stalk to make jantar and tabij. And I want to say here that our moderator, Ms. Shalima, has done a wonderful paper on the talisman, which she has presented and think I published at various conferences. So I don't know, maybe she can tell us if she found in her research that parts of the ganja was used in the talisman. So there is always, when you look at the literature, it's abundant. The literature is abundant with comparisons between alcohol and ganja. And in his research, Khwaj Hassan states that Hindu ceremonies in India have a daru. So they don't have daru, sorry. That is alcohol. That is tabooed, but ganja and bhang is used. So it is significant. And he observed that, you know, why people prefer to use ganja more than alcohol. He said that because they said that alcohol is associated with fighting, argument, bickering, quarreling, and so on. And it's also associated with consumption of meat. So the alcohol and meat would go together, but not the ganja. So fasting meant for those people in India, and I get in parts of Trinidad and the diaspora as well, fasting means abstaining from alcohol, but not ganja. So again, during looking at that comparison, during indentureship in Trinidad, it was observed that alcohol had more visible bad effects than ganja. And those of you who are interested in doing further research, look at Neoff and Neoff in 1960. They have numerous mention of that in the diary of the Canadian Presbyterian missionary, Reverend John Morton. Morton, he too mentioned the bad effects of alcohol as compared to ganja. And he makes a comparison and he names these two items. Ganja, interestingly, was sold in company stores to laborers. During indentureship, it was not illegal. Everybody could grow it. Everybody could smoke it, use it for religious purposes. It was free. And to the extent that the indented immigrants, particularly in Cedros area in Trinidad, were planting ganja near their huts. Huts made out of thatch and so on those days. They found it so profitable and so useful that it was reported that they were actually abandoning vegetable cultivation. So it was an industry. So much marijuana was being grown in Trinidad in these times that the government was exporting it. And in an effort to reduce the amount of cultivation for marijuana, ganja, legislation was passed in 1884 requiring a license of $100 an acre to grow ganja. So Indians have always been involved in marijuana cultivation. They have been involved in agriculture in the diaspora. They were planting almost everywhere. I'm sure in Fiji, I'm sure in South Africa, you know, the research has to be done. Yes, my PhD supervisor, Brian Dutoy, did research on the marijuana cultivation in South Africa. He was a South African professor at the University of Florida, where I studied. And in nearby Venezuela, Indians were planting marijuana there too, because marijuana is just about, Venezuela is just about 8 miles from Trinidad. So a lot of indented immigrants absconded, and a whole, I think a whole thesis, if not a whole, but I'm sure a whole paper has been written on the absconded Indian indented immigrants to Venezuela. Right, so they were everywhere planting. Again, in Jamaica, we get to Jamaica. I'm coming close to the end, Ms. Moderator. So Rubin and Comitas see that the roots of the Jamaican ganja complex can be linked to the Indian subcontinent. So these are the people who are making these claims. They are not Hindus, Rubin and Comitas. They are not Indians. They have no vested interest, emotional, ancestral, or otherwise. They are researchers, American researchers. And they have done their research in Jamaica, and they say, yes, there is a link. So Rubin and Comitas said there's a direct India to Jamaican link in the techniques of cultivation, in the ways of smoking it, in the ways of preparing it for medicinal uses, in the certain parts, you know, there are male and female, there's different varieties, the lexicon, right? Ganja is a Hindi word, and that is a common word used in Jamaica. So he said all of the evidence that he has collected led to the conclusion that there's a direct India to Jamaican diffusion. And this, I believe, is my final slide. The Mansingh, we must really praise them. Ajay and Lakshmi Mansingh, husband and wife team, have written a lot about the unacknowledged Indian and Hindu influences on the Rastafarian faith in Jamaica in the form of ganja, which is the Hindi word, Kali herb, right? Kali, Hindu deity, the chilam, chalice, which they call it, the chilam made out of clay pipe, and there's a certain art in smoking it. You have to put both hands together, cup it, and take a pull, and you pass it around communally. So it broke down barriers of race, of religion, of ethnicity, of geography, right? When that was shared, ganja had to be shared. And of course, the dreadlocks, I've shown you an image of the sadhus in India and the Indian influence in meditation, in asceticism, in the belief in reincarnation, with Haile Selassie being an incarnation of Jesus. The Indians introduced rice cultivation in Westmoreland in a large scale, and the vegetarian diets. Rastafarians don't eat meat, right? The vegetarian diet is called ITAL. And interestingly, the leading founder of the Rastafarianism, his name is Leonard Howard of Clarendon, and he changed his name. So influenced was he to Gangon Guru Maharaj. And my final point I want to make here before I close, you know, I was doing the research to update my 1995 work, which I had done on marijuana. And I discovered that in the Times of India, there was an article, and the writer says that in his devotion to bring universal peace, love, and togetherness to humanity, reggae icon Bob Marley can be truly described as a bhakti singer, a devotional singer. And I wish I had more time, otherwise I would have played a reggae tune for you, which references marijuana. So I think that brings me to the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahabir. You've grounded our conversation in history, in religiosity, in medicine as well. Thank you so much. And I could, may I direct you to the chat? There are several questions already. So for all of those who would like to have your questions addressed, please know that at the end of all of the presentations, you will have an opportunity to ask directly to the speakers. And please keep them coming in the chat so that the speakers could prepare their responses. Thanks again, Dr. Mahabir. I've been scrolling through looking for Mr. Halls, but I'm not seeing him. So when you get a moment, just please try to locate him. Meanwhile, let me introduce Dr. VITRA GOSINE. She is from the U.S. She's an endocrinologist and owner of the Center for Integrative and Functional Endocrinology and Lotus Life, which is the Center for Holistic Health and Conscious Living. Welcome, Dr. GOSINE. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. A warm welcome to all the viewers and listeners. It's my distinct pleasure to be entrusted with the task to discuss medical issues surrounding marijuana use. Would you like me to go ahead and share the screen, or would you guys load the slides?
Robin will help. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so my topic today is medical cannabis. And basically, I'm going to be looking at a clinical and holistic health perspective, you know, in terms of how this impacts us medically, clinically, and as a society. Next slide. So before we proceed, the most important thing is let's clarify some basic information. The term marijuana has been used quite interchangeably. Just some basic terminologies before I proceed, so we're all on the same page. Hemp and marijuana are both cannabis plants. The cannabis plants has about, the plant has about 100 cannabinoids. CBD and THC are the most common. These are the ones that are usually discussed for health benefits and recreational use. Hemp specifically is specifically a cannabis plant that has 0.3% or less of THC, which is a psychoactive compound that is most associated with marijuana. Marijuana, however, is also a cannabis plant, but the difference is that it has greater than 0.3% THC. In other words, marijuana has a much stronger or more potent, you know, concentration of THC. Both THC and CBD are found in marijuana and hemp. THC has is of higher concentration in marijuana, whereas CBD is actually found in higher concentration in hemp. THC is actually the main psychoactive substance in cannabis. So that's the substance that has more of the addictive effect. And whereas CBD is not intoxicating. We have the full names of each of the compounds there. THC is actually delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, which is quite a long name, and CBD is actually called cannabidiol. Next slide. So this is basically the chemical structure of THC. Next slide. And CBD. Next slide. Okay, so what I want to discuss here is basically we as humans have a natural endocannabinoid system. In other words, these substances that are found in marijuana and hemp, they're not the root compound being a cannabinoid is not foreign to the human body. We do have a natural cannabinoid receptor system throughout the body. We have a natural, one of the probably the most studied cannabinoid or natural cannabinoid is anandamide. Notice the name, the root word, anand, from the Sanskrit word bliss. And that's actually where the name originated. Cannabinoids or natural cannabinoids are actually neurochemical messengers. And they are actually how our cells speak to each other, specifically neurons or nerve cells. Their real function lie with how they affect the body's function, thoughts, and emotions. So cannabis actually interacts with these same receptors. THC increases a chemical in the brain called dopamine. It's called a pleasure center, which is why it's addictive. CBD, on the other hand, doesn't have this addictive property. It actually increases anxiety in really high doses. It can actually decrease anxiety in low doses as well. So the point I want to stress here is, as you can see in this diagram, there are two types of cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2. CB1 has more of a distribution in the central nervous system, brain, spinal cord, and throughout the body as well, but more so in the CNS and in the brain. CB2 is distributed more completely throughout the body. Notice that many organs of the body have these receptors. So it means that although this is a natural system, compounds that contain cannabinoids, such as cannabis, whether it's marijuana, hemp, whether it's THC or CBD, can actually interact with these receptors and modulate these functions. Next slide. Okay, so the question is, should we be using this medicinally? Next slide. So is this legal in the US? So laws are constantly changing and modified based on ongoing research, ongoing medical research. For example, the NIH has more than 160 clinical trials with CBD for looking for potential treatments and cures. So cannabis, by definition, over 0.3% THC, the legal term for that is marijuana, and it has to do with the concentration. So it's currently illegal under federal law. That is a concentration of over 0.3%. The only exception is when it's used for FDA-approved research programs. About 70% of US states, and that number is increasing, allow medical cannabis products. Remember, states do have jurisdiction over their own laws. Increasing number of states obviously legalizing it for recreational use. Medical marijuana, however, is an entirely different subject. So currently, it requires a letter from a medical doctor licensed in a state where it's actually legalized. So patients must have a qualifying medical condition, which is state specific, meaning each state in the US has its own list of qualifying conditions. And at that point, you obtain a medical marijuana ID card, or that's issued to you, and it permits the purchase of medical marijuana from a dispensary. So the FDA has actually approved a CBD drug, cannabidiol, for severe childhood seizures. And there are other approved cannabinoid drugs, dronabinol and nebilone, for nausea and vomiting with chemotherapy. These are actually used in patients who have not, cancer chemotherapy patients who have actually not responded to traditional, what we call antiemetics or anti-nausea drugs. Next slide. So current clinical uses, pain syndromes, so chronic pain management. This has definitely provided benefits to patients, and migraine headaches. Epileptic seizures is a big one. Alzheimer's disease, ongoing research is underway. Cancer chemotherapy side effects, nausea, vomiting, and weight loss. Those are some of the side effects from chemotherapy, which CBD derivatives are especially helpful. eating disorders such as anorexia, because it increases appetite. Helping with treating conditions such as anxiety, PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, glaucoma, muscle spasms and stiffness in multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease tremors, ALS, which is a neuromuscular disease, wasting syndrome, which is known as cachexia in HIV and AIDS patient, and in fact, wasting syndrome in any medical condition, autoimmune deficiency, and autoimmune diseases and immunodeficiency diseases as well. It decreases, cannabinoids have a known effect of decreasing inflammatory conditions. So basically, we're able to use that to modulate many inflammatory conditions, which is the root cause or has some effect in role in cardiovascular disease, cancer, and autoimmune disease, and also for digestive medical conditions as well. Next slide. So this is a summary of the known effects of cannabinoids, specifically marijuana, on the brain. Short-term effects include things like altered senses or ability to perceive. Changes in mood is a big one. Impaired concentration and body movement. Difficulty thinking and problem solving. So what we call executive function. Memory impairment, hallucinations and delusion, psychosis, and anxiety. Long-term effects, obviously, marijuana has a high concentration by definition of THC. And as I explained before, it does have a role in the increase in dopamine, which is sort of the pleasure center reward mechanism in the brain that makes it addictive. In addition to that, it can also cause severe nausea, suicidal ideations, and depression. So these are some of the big ones. You'll notice in my later slides that I'll refer to the fact that some of these conditions that we're talking about, it's actually dose dependent. Next slide. Okay, just a brief, not to get into the nitty gritty of this, but cannabis and the brain. So these are the different parts of the brain that control different functions, and especially the effect of marijuana, THC component of marijuana. So basically, the cerebral cortex is a big one. This is where our executive function, thinking, our critical thinking, intellectual ability, so it can impair short-term memory as well. The amygdala is actually basically the center of emotions, more of the primitive type emotions, flight or fight responses. And basically, these control of this can be actually, it's a twofold modality. And again, depending on the dose, it can be either increased or decreased. The hippocampus controls sort of short-term memory and recall, and emotional memory as well. So these particular functions can be impaired by cannabis. Brainstem functions, this is actually a positive effect, because this is what's actually used in terms of to help with decrease in nausea, pain, and helping with blood pressure regulation. So this is actually a positive effect of cannabinoids. Cerebellum controls coordination, movement, balance. This can be impaired. And finally, hypothalamus, another positive function would be the fact that it's responsible for appetite. So for example, patients with wasting syndromes in HIV, AIDS, cancer, it can actually increase appetite. So, we can actually increase some weight so patients can continue their chemotherapy. Next slide. So cardiovascular effects, basically, we're seeing a lot of this, especially with THC in healthy young men and elderly patients. THC actually has adverse cardiovascular effects, all of which are listed here. To name a few: irregular heartbeats or heart rate, known as an arrhythmia. We call postural hypotension, means that when blood pressure falls when you get up from a seated to standing position. Heart attacks, strokes, ruptured vessels, inflammation of blood vessels, and also cardiomyopathy. There is a heart syndrome called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, actually also known as broken heart syndrome, but it is basically where the shape of the heart changes, the ventricles dilate, and THC has an effect on the muscle fibers that allow the heart to do that. CBD, however, they have not noticed, studies do not suggest that it has the same effect, and it may actually have a positive effect. It may decrease inflammation in blood vessels and ease strain on the heart. So the only other thing is that both THC and CBD, which are found in cannabinoids, in cannabis, are both metabolized by the liver, which may interfere with certain medications that you take for your various medical conditions. Next slide. And this is just a summary of the effects, which is my area of expertise on in the endocrine system. So basically, the pineal gland, the effect of cannabis or THC specifically increases melatonin, which actually can lead to drowsiness and decrease arousal. And it can disrupt the sleep-wake cycle or circadian rhythm. The hypothalamus is another part of the brain where it acts, and this is in the entire endocrine system, decreases hormones that control the pituitary gland, which is the master gland in the body. And that pituitary gland actually controls the rest of the glands you see listed here. The thyroid gland, which is responsible for metabolism and energy level. The thymus, which is responsible for immune system function. The adrenal gland, this is a bit of a tricky one. So high doses, and in the short term, it increases stress hormones, the stress hormone cortisol. However, over a long-term use, it blunts the body's response to stress. So cortisol is the hormone responsible for allowing us to handle stress, both physiologically and psychologically and emotionally. So in the short term, there's increased cortisol, and we don't like a lot of cortisol around in the body. It has some, and while it's a stress hormone, negative effects in terms of central obesity, elevated blood sugar levels, the list is endless. However, in the long term, we have a blunted response to cortisol levels. In the pancreas, it's known to cause pancreatitis or inflammation of the pancreas, and it has a role in diabetes. There are conflicting studies at this point regarding diabetes. Some suggest that it helps, it actually increases the hemoglobin A1C for any of you who are diabetic. In other studies suggest that it has a role in insulin resistance and may increase that. Again, these studies are conflicting. In the male reproductive system, basically we are seeing low testosterone levels and low libido. In the female reproductive system, which I can't quite see on my screen, but nevertheless, it actually causes irregular menstrual periods, as well as decreased fertility due to low estrogen and progesterone levels. Next slide. So some clinical, I'm sorry?
Yes, would you mind making your closing statements, please?
Sure. So challenges and clinical considerations are here. There are some useful medical benefits, but not regulated by any scientific body. No clear consensus, so among medical professionals, we have to individualize treatment. We do need well-established therapeutic doses for safety and efficacy, and we need to standardize the purity of substances. There's, again, conflicting evidence. We do have some public misinformation and misperceptions, which we're clearing up in this forum, and also people are getting information on Google, and unqualified persons who try to sell this, who don't have the knowledge or expertise to explain health benefits to patients. And next slide. Okay, finally, I want to take a more holistic perspective. We do have to take a multidimensional perspective of health, which is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, not just physical health. The question becomes, when we discuss marijuana or cannabis, what is the intention behind the choice to use cannabis? Is it medicinal? Is it for medicinal purposes? Is it recreational? Is it cultural? Is it because of addiction or to solve personal problems? I'd like to suggest the role of spiritual practice and meditation in coping with life stresses. Meditation would give you the best high. It's free with zero side effects and highly addictive in a positive way. We do need to have a clear sensorium to awaken as human beings to achieve our true potential. And disease is not just the absence of, health is not just the absence of disease. It does involve a life of purpose and meaning, connected to our authentic self, cultivating deep and lasting human relationships, as we are neurobiologically wired for connection and a belief in something greater than ourselves and a spiritual connection to everything around us. Next slide. I'd like to thank you for your time, for listening to the medical benefits of marijuana and also some downsides. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them in the forum. Thank you.
That was excellent, Dr. GOSINE. Thank you very much. And
You're welcome.
I'm sure our audience does indeed have questions for you, and was very revealing.
Thank you.
We move on now to Dr. RANDHIR NANDA, who is a psychiatrist and lecturer of psychiatry at ADEK Medical University of Suriname. Welcome, Dr. Nanda. You can go ahead and present.
Yeah, moment, yes. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, can you see me?
Yes, we're seeing and
Yes,
hearing
all
you.
right. Can I start sharing my presentation?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Sorry, yes. Hello, everyone. My name is RANDHIR NANDA. I'm from Suriname. I'm as told, a psychiatrist, and we have one psychiatric hospital in Suriname. So I see a lot of cases of substance abuse. So my presentation will be more focused on the negative side, the consequences. So in my presentation, I will focus on the findings regarding the use of cannabis and cannabis products by Surinamese and Surinamese of Indian origin. Because I don't, my language is Dutch, so please excuse me for my bad articulation. So as I told you, Suriname, I'm from Suriname. We have a population of about 600,000 people. We have different ethnic and religion groups. With the second biggest one, the Hindu group. So yeah, we make a big part of the society. So the cannabis use in Suriname, cannabis is used for medicinal and recreational purposes. If I talk about Suriname, then I can say that for the medical use, you can find CBD products at the pharmacies or the supermarkets. It's mostly imported from Europe, and we also produce CBD oil in Suriname. And the recreational, the illegal side, yeah, it's supplied by the drug dealers. So they are found everywhere. So that's the illegal. The medicinal, yeah, use is not legalized. It is tolerated. What we have in Suriname, what we can use, what they use is it's known space cake, the marijuana, the normal weed. We have Colombian weed, we call it colo. We have the Guyanese weed, the high grade. We have Jami, that is Jamaican weed, and we have hash, and we have also some hybrid marijuana strains like skunk and spice. So I've put the prices, so maybe you can compare how, if it's yeah, pricey or cheap in our country. I don't know, but I've heard that the price has gone up because of, I don't know, yeah, they cannot, we don't have Jamaican weed in Suriname right now. I don't know, maybe the trafficking is not quite how it was in the past. I've taken a few pictures. This is the Colombian weed, the colo, that is the high grade Guyanese weed. This is hash known. What you find in Suriname, yeah, these pictures are from Suriname. And we have the hybrid, the skunk. This very potent and very high THC concentration in it. So I will present some data from Surandu, that stands for Suriname Epidemiological Network on Drug Use. And it gathered information from the treatment centers, and they found that the highest prevalence of cannabis use was in the age group of 11 to 24 years. And the age group 25 to 34 years were the second biggest group. So you see, they start with use of cannabis at very young age, and the youngest client was 9 years young. Other demographic factors, they were most of them unmarried, unemployed, low education, and mostly male. So the profile of the cannabis users admitted for treatment in 2019 to 2021, we see age of first use at very young age. Most of the clients, patients were under the 30 years, most of them male and single. Most of them were dependent, they were living with their parents and family. We also saw that they have a low educational level, incomplete primary school. They were all, most of them were unemployed. And another big finding was that, important finding was that the encouragement to get treatment was not because of an intrinsic motivation. It was because of encouragement by friends and family. It was not their own choice to go to the treatment center to get treatment, although they were experiencing a lot of problems with their health and in the primary system, support system. If we differentiate the use of cannabis by ethnicity, then you see that the Hindu group is the second biggest group, the Creoles by 45%, and the Hindu 23%. There's the use of cannabis, recreational abuse, because I'm looking at this at the use from a doctor's point of view. I have data of treatment centers. So these are data from cases who are getting treatment. So what I've done also some research on my clients. I'm as a psychiatrist, I have my own polyclinic, outpatient clinic, and we see a lot of patients with a variety of problems with abuse and other addictions. And we have found we have some findings that we can see, like risk factors when we took the intake. When the client comes to us, we have intake. We do an intake and we do an assessment of the whole situation. So we found a few points that most of the clients were from families with a single parent. They were from large families, more than 3 children. They had a low education level. They had we had signs of lack of attachment, of emotional neglect. We had signs of low self-esteem, negative emotions, depressed emotions. We also had we observed lack of discipline and supervision by elders. The habits of the parents were also very important, because it's important what the parents give us, like example. Lack of social skills were also observed, and the social tolerance and perception of the substance was also very important, because in some societies and some families it is tolerated like not so harmful. So that makes also that's also a big factor we have to be aware of. So if you look at my you focus on the right side, you see when the age group 12 to 18 years, these are my clients. These are intake information. When I saw them the first time, they were using the major substance of use was cannabis at the age 12 to 18 years. The second one was nicotine. The third one was alcohol. If you look at the factors or the findings, you see a big family, low education level, no relationship. They don't tend to get in a relation. They have depressive emotions, low self-esteem, self-confidence is also low, impulsive behavior also observed, and they are experiencing problems within their primary support system. And the second group, 19 to 25 years, we see they use the major substance of use is still cannabis. Second one, alcohol and nicotine, and cocaine is rising. And they also report living in a big family, low education level. They don't tend to get in a relationship, also depressive emotions, also conflicts within primary support system, low self-esteem, low self-confidence, and impulsive behavior. You see the tendency, they start with cannabis, and then at the higher age, they also take other substances. And if you look at the age group 26 to 40 years, then you see the substance of use is alcohol. Again, these are clients at the intake. These are not clients who are undergoing treatment. This is the first time when I saw them. The age group 26 to 40, they were using alcohol. Cannabis use was decreasing. Nicotine was almost the same. And you see this group was using more cocaine. And if you look at the factors that you see, they had a job, 50%, and more than 50 had a relation, they had children. But that's that you have with the alcohol users, mainly in Suriname. And they also reported depressive emotions, experiencing psychological violence and rejection, also self-esteem and self-confidence problems, and also conflicts within their primary support system. You see tendency, they're going to more alcohol and more cocaine. So, and the age group 40 years and older, you see the major substance is alcohol, cocaine, and cigarettes are almost the same. This my presentation again is meant to give you an overview how the use of substances shifts in Suriname. It's not only here, but also in the Caribbean and worldwide, we see this tendency that beginning with cannabis and ending up with cocaine, with all the devastating consequences. So for medicinal use, we had a very clear presentation. This I will go further. What I do is sometimes I advise my clients to get the CBD oil for anxiety problems, symptoms, some sleeping disturbances. But in Suriname, it is not the use of medicinal cannabis product is increasing. It is growing. It's not or they buy it on their own account. They don't take advice from the doctor. They hear from people who are living abroad, and they sometimes family send CBD oil for families here to use against a variety of medical problems. So the positive effects of cannabis, that's the meaning. I think everyone who starts with using a psychoactive substance is trying to do it for recreational use, and it's the THC. It's clear. It's for personal enjoyment. It happens in a social situation. It's very occasional, using small amounts. It's under control, no problems. It is not meant to deal with problems. It's meant to have some fun, and it is not every day. That's what that is safe. But what we see is because of the risk of addiction and the reason why people get, and also the first age of use of drugs makes it very complicated. Yes, because the risk of addiction is getting higher. So there are evidence for cognitive deficits. That's also, we have heard that. The risk of addiction is high, and if it's initiated in adolescence, it's higher, the 17%. Daily users have a more higher risk of getting addicted. and risk for development of psychosis and schizophrenia, as also mentioned in the previous presentation, the psychological problems, sleep disorders, manic mood symptoms, depression, anxiety, aggressive behavior, personality changes. We have seen this. I see these psychological problems and also the somatic problems. They're also observed. So finally, the findings with regard to drug use by Hindus in Suriname. So I've noted a few points. I'm concerned about the shift of first use to earlier age. Alcohol, cigarette, cannabis, also cocaine, they tend to use it at an earlier age. It is is a huge problem for me because I see the clients who has a variety of medical problems and social problems and learning problems, school with work. The cannabis use is significant, high and problematic under the Hindus, and with the devastating consequences. We also see that the use of alcohol and cocaine is notably high under the Hindus compared to cannabis. They tend to use, they tend to use alcohol and cocaine, and they are using less cannabis when they are in a farther route of using drugs. Use of multiple drugs is very frequent with harmful consequences. And what you have mentioned, the coping with the psychological challenges creates more problems and more harm. That's what we see here in Suriname, of what I see. I see also a lot of mental disorders as a result of polydrug use. There is a strong relationship between drug use and suicide. We have a big problem in Suriname, not because of drug use, but we have a big suicide problem in Suriname. The serious chronic somatic disease is also, a major concern point. I have to say that I have lost a good friend today because of liver function problems. He was using alcohol. He's passed away today. So I know a lot of people who die because of the consequences of alcohol and drug use. Also, the severe domestic violence and disruption of family situation also observed, and the serious socio-economic downfall. They lose their job, they lose their house, they lose everything. They land on the street begging for money, and they don't have a place to stay. That is my presentation about a few major concerns, medical concerns about cannabis, but I'm aware that cannabis and cannabis products are also used for religious and cultural purposes, and as long as it is recreational, it should not be giving the user big problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nanda. And on behalf of everyone, we're very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I also want to say that we recognize that English is not your first language, and you did quite well with your presentation in that regard. Thank you for all the information that you shared as well. It was very enlightening, and to get the actual data in Suriname is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I will ask you to please sort of restrict yourself in the chat so that we can pay attention to what is being said by the presenters, and then you can ask your questions and make your comments if time permits. I want to introduce you now to Mr. JAVED BAKSH. He's a former ICT specialist and now managing director of GrassLab Herbal Supplements, which is Trinidad's first registered medical cannabis consultancy and dispensary. Welcome, JAVED. Go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. You hear me fine?
Yes.
All right. So thanks a lot for having me here. This is a really interesting opportunity I've been given to talk about medical cannabis and my involvement in the industry. So as as you would have heard, my background is basically in IT. So I was doing that for the majority of my life. Fortunately, I happened to end up in two different industries, which kind of ties into what I'm doing now. So for about a year and a half, I worked for a company called Cardiovascular Associates doing IT support there. So I had a really interesting look into the medical industry while I was working there. And I learned quite a bit of things that, you would hear that the whole medical industry is a profit-driven thing. And until I heard it come out of the mouth of the owner of the company, then it really kind of sunk and set itself into stone there. So I kind of shifted my my views on how I looked at the standard medical industry. And I'll share something on my screen here so you would understand. Right, so this, as you would see here, see, where is the other one? Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Strange.
Robin, would you please permit him to share his screen if it hasn't been done? Okay, Javed, we're seeing it now.
Right. So this here is actually a bit of my medical history. So I was diagnosed with schizophrenia years ago, like a long time before cannabis was even a part of my life, before I even thought about using it as a substance for anything at all. I was totally against the use until I went through the entire medical fraternity trying to find some solution to get over the schizophrenia and depression that I was diagnosed with. And it was basically me starting on 3 pills a day. And at the end of a 2-year period, I was on 26 pills a day, trying to solve a problem that it just kept getting worse. So from there, I kind of discovered cannabis. So when I say I discovered cannabis, basically it's not something I went looking for. It just kind of fell into my lap at the right time. So usually you would hear now from research that anybody that's diagnosed with something like schizophrenia or certain types of mental conditions, that it may not be ideal to use cannabis-based products. While that is true in some cases, I've noticed in the years that I've been doing this, which is 6 years, that is very subjective and it's based on a lot of different factors. So the reason why I didn't do any slides is it's easier to show like actual products. So like these here, these are balms. So you could get these in topicals to use for different types of things like pain, inflammation, rashes, sunburn, any type of topical ailment that you may have, but they formulated in a way that they would actually penetrate the blood skin barrier and they would penetrate below the surface of the skin to help deal with any type of underlying problems there. But there's also gummies, there's also different types of tinctures. And as Dr. GOSINE would have mentioned in her presentation about the THC and the CBD, yes, those are the 2 most prevalent compounds found in the cannabis plant, most abundant. And she also mentioned that there are hundreds of others, which unfortunately is something that a lot of persons who are getting into cannabis studies and research, they tend to miss a lot of vital cannabinoids that tend to work better for a lot of conditions over others. So for example, diabetes was mentioned before. Now, there are certain studies that say, well, CBD has been shown to be effective in treating diabetes, and it may work with some, may not work with some, but there's actually a particular compound. This is something called CBG, cannabigerol. So cannabigerol is actually really, really effective in treating people with type 2 diabetes. And in the 6 years I've been doing this, I would say about 95% of my clients with type 2 diabetes are not on any of their pharmaceuticals. And this is not me pulling them off, they came off themselves. So how I usually do consultations is not that you just come into my store and you say, you know, you have X problem, and I'll just decide to say, well, hey, you try this and it'll work. So I'll just pull up another file on my screen here. And this is actually my client form. So I gather as much information from my clients as possible to deal with current symptoms, any types of formal diagnosis, their family history. So I would get a full profile of what exactly I would be treating. Now, in certain cases, somebody may come to treat one particular issue. Let's say it's insomnia, which is something that I get a lot. And in a lot of these cases, I would realize that through the consultations, that these people would either suffer from a large amount of stress or anxiety during the course of the day, which in itself usually causes problems with sleep and being able to wind down and relax. So instead of treating the symptom that someone may be experiencing, I rather treat the issue itself. And in cases where I would be recommending certain things to clients, I would try to find one product that would work across the board to treat every type of issue that they would be having. Now, in some cases, there would be somewhat of a trial period, and the trial period would be dependent on, everybody has a different biological makeup. So they would not always respond the typical way you would expect them to. So for example, this is something called CBN. So CBN is cannabinol. So this is a compound found in cannabis that is really good in treating Parkinson's, severe inflammation, chronic pain, insomnia, severe anxiety. And with the products that I have here, even though you could use one of these to treat like a multitude of different ailments, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is definitely going to work for a specific person, for a specific issue, even though it can treat them. So I have had a couple clients with insomnia that used this and they had the complete opposite effect, which is pretty much going against the grain of how it's designed to work. But those in itself present some minimal challenges, which is why it's important for someone like me to be able to work with medical practitioners who would have certain information on their clients, as well as, you know, a medical history that their client themselves may not have the full information on. And in doing that, somebody like me now could work with these medical professionals and find the ideal solution for patients that are dealing with a host of different issues. Because in most cases, the people that come to me, it's because they've exhausted their options with pharmaceuticals and they are pretty much out of options. So when someone does a consultation at my company, the consultations are free. They are not obligated to buy any products from my store. They don't even have to go that route. What I will do is I will present the information, give the clients the options, and then at the end of the day, let them decide. Because I don't ever promote these products as a miracle cure. That is madness. It is not something that I would advise anybody to do. In terms of being a viable treatment option, yes, I have had great success in some cancer cases. I've had clients that went into remission. But again, this is dependent on the type of issue. So my expertise would lie in cannabinoid treatments, and not only cannabinoid treatments, but shoes. These are CBD blends, right? So these have something called terpenes in them in addition to the cannabinoids. So terpenes are botanical sources of phytochemicals from plants. So they provide the smell and the taste that you would get from certain plants, certain fruits. So, for example, lilanol, that is that you can find in lavender, which naturally promotes relaxation. So you would find when you add the lilanol extract, the terpene itself, with CBD or with like CBN, it would amplify the effects of, let's say, the relaxation or pain relief, or in this case, alpha-pinene. Alpha-pinene is an excellent bronchodilator. In fact, to date, every one of my clients that has visited me with asthma and they've used it, I've had clients come back and tell me they toss their respirator in the garbage. So I don't try to base what I do on analytic, just case-based evidence, as in someone says X, I just use that as a foundation to treat everyone. No, that would be the reason for the form here. So everybody would get a case-by-case treatment, and then I would continue to build my database on the types of cannabinoids, how effective it is in treating certain types of conditions, what would prevent it from being effective with certain clients versus others. And that's it in a nutshell. This here, probably, this is just one of the, where did it go? It's up here. Just pull this back up here somewhere. Here it is. Right, so this is just one of the certificates that I have.
Javed, excuse me. We're coming to the close of your presentation, but maybe you want to stop share on the form and start a new screen share on the certificate.
Yeah, so this certificate is just one of the 6 that I have in cannabis-based studies. So I don't do this willy-nilly. It's not something that I just got into as a way to make money. My business is actually not profit-driven. I do a lot of charity work that is not advertised. And my goal is essentially provide a level of care and a level of service to anybody that would need the help medically and is considering cannabis as an option, because I personally saw relief. It literally saved my life, and I pretty much made it my life's mission to use it as best within that I have to help as much people as I can.
Javed, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your personal story and for sharing the manner in which you conduct your business as well. And listening to you, I can't help but reflect on our ancestors. I'm just thinking, you know, they must have been very smart to pack this little plant into their little bundle to bring it with them, because there may have been some personal story behind it. They would have benefited in some way from the use. Certainly, I don't think they would have brought it with them if it was harmful to people. So that would have emerged over a period of time due to overuse and intolerance, perhaps. I want to thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now welcome our final speaker for today. And this is Mr. GLENROY Halls. He's also known as BONGO Greece. He's the chairman of the All Mansions of Rastafari, Nyahbinghi Elder, and international coordinator of the Rastafari Global Community. Welcome, Mr. Halls.
I think he lost connection because they're not seeing him.
Oh, I see. All right. So what should we do at this point in time? There are several questions and comments on the chat, and so I want to say thank you very much to all of our presenters, and I will now invite those of you who wish to ask your question directly to our speakers to please indicate that you wish to do so by using the reaction button. If you look at the base of your screen, there's a reaction button. When you click on it, you'll see a raised hand icon. Please show your hand so that I can call on you to ask your question. Okay, Jerry. You've been very active on the chat and I expected this. Please go ahead, unmute your mic and direct your question to a specific speaker one at a time, please. Thank you.
Question to Mr. Javed. I was reading the article and I thought it said Mr. Javed imports hemp to create some of his products. Is that correct?
No, I don't. So all the products that I distribute, they are manufactured by different vendors in the US, some in Canada, some in Spain, actually. But what I do is I usually vet the companies and vet the products before I decide to distribute it at my store. So if it does not meet my standards as a treatment option, it does not end up at my store.
Yeah, but if you look at the article on the right side, I thought it said you use hemp. You import hemp to make some of the medicines.
No. I don't make anything here. As you can see, all the products are labeled and packaged, branded, and they are all by different companies, ready-made. I just buy the finished product.
So what's the requirement for you to run a store like this? Do you have to be licensed, certified, degrees, things like that?
I would say you need to have a fair bit of knowledge of how cannabis works as a medicine, because I don't take treatment of this very lightly. I have had clients that have purchased products at various other stores locally, and when they got here, I would have to explain to them why it wasn't working for them, why you probably wasted your money, and why this was probably the wrong option to start with. So I would say a fair bit of knowledge and that as a medicine. Also, you need to be familiar with some medical ailments and like how they affect people and how the cannabinoids are going to interact with a person's biological makeup and the endocannabinoid system. Because in some cases, people just have an endocannabinoid deficiency, and you would find supplemental use of a cannabinoid like CBD, or even just a change in your diet would make a vast difference.
Yeah. And so
Thank you very much, Mr. Jailal. Let's just take a question from someone else, please, and maybe you can come back in after. Thank you. Mr. David Clark, your hand is up. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Okay, yes. When I start this, I want to find what is the GrassLab about? What is GrassLab about in terms of the category? Yes.
Okay, Ms. JAVED BAKSH will answer you.
Okay, so my company does consultancy and retail distribution for cannabis-based products. So that would include cannabis and hemp-based extracts. You cannot get any products by me without doing a consultation first. And as I mentioned before, no one is obligated to get anything by me. So even if you need to have a consultation done on if cannabis may be the right option for you, or if it's something that you could consider, or if you just need to get information about cannabis as a medicine on the whole, I would be a guy.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Javed. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, I just want to introduce to you our final speaker who has just joined us. And this is Mr. GLENROY Halls. He's the chairman again. I'm just repeating for his own benefit. He's the chairman of the All Mansions of Rastafari, Nyahbinghi Elder, and international coordinator of the Rastafari Global Community. Mr. Halls, welcome. You can go ahead and present for 12 minutes.
Yeah, pleasant good afternoon to each and everyone. Sorry for the late arrival of this meeting due to technical problems.
That's all right.
Give thanks, to all the previous speakers before me, and give thanks for those that are commenced the program for today. Pleasant good afternoon. Again, the topic this evening that we are about to deal with is the use of ganja, Rasta, and in India. I start by saying, of all the plants that man have ever grown, ganja is the most praised and the most cursed, the most beneficial and the most scorched. Today, as we discuss between the East Indian community and the Rastafari community, today we look at our cultural diversity as one. The sacred herb used by the Rastafari as a sacrament in worship. The ancient Christian sacrament of Holy Communion is transformed in the Rastafari form of divine worship into a ritual involving ganja or cannabis. In our religion, as Rastafari, cannabis is regarded as a sacred God-given plant and as a spiritual food to feed and nurture the several spirits of God. It is used to bring followers closer together and the Almighty in a communal settings. Rastafari followers give a central place to ganja as a substance given by God to harmonize our communion with God. Highly high. In our religion, cannabis is regarded as a sacred herb. As part of our religious observance, the herb is burnt and is smoked, and its smoke is inhaled through the medium of a chalice or chillum pipe. The practice is intended to induce a particular spiritual mood to enhance the religious experience of worship of God. This observance is practiced by adult believers and is accompanied by the recital of psalms and prayers, in which the Rastafari community call Isis. Cannabis is regarded as a sacred God-given plant and a spiritual food to feed and nurture the several spirits of the Almighty. Highly high. Ganja was spearheaded and integrated as a cultural, sacramental, and business to the Rastafari movement. Growing ganja is part of the Rastafari inalienable right as an indigenous people. One of the most important developments is the use of the substance ganja, marijuana, as a sacrament. As it is well known, ganja was brought into the Western Hemisphere by the Indian indentured servants in the 19th century. Through the process of occultation, it became widely used among the African population, becoming one of the most important substances in folk pharmacopoeia and easily available in the public markets. The specific sacred use by the Rastafari seemed to begin late in the 1940s with the attribution of its origin to King Solomon, to the grove of King Solomon. Rastafari's sacrilege of it may have been influenced by the Indian practice prior to smoking and saying Bahamado Tangines, which Indians mean give thanks and praises. The Rastafari went further and adopted the hookah in their ritual use of the herb. Among Indians, the hookah was used only by women and only for smoking tobacco. The hookah is a water pipe consisting of a smaller vessel in which the water is placed, a pipe leading from it, a chillum for smoking ganja. Drawing from the story of the Last Supper when Jesus passed around the cup, the Rastafari referenced the hookah as a chalice or cup, which they reverently bless and share in a circle. Moving from left to right, the reenactment of the communion they compare to the Christians sipping the wine, but they draw on Old Testament metaphors where I refer to the rising fume as increasing being offered up to Jah. So when I smoke, and I prayers, and I use the words, may this smoke cleanse and purify I heart. Right? Highly I, Rastafari. Right? Examination now of the Indo population. As you all are aware, today the government of Trinidad and Tobago has passed the religious and medicinal bill. The religious body, mostly the Hindus and the Rastafari, is now to begin to get sacramental rights. Under sacramental rights, however, we are not able to express our cultural and economic right, which today, this gathering today is very essential for us to come together as one in terms of welcoming and fighting for our rights. Since we were being beat, Rastafari had been the ones who stood up and fought for it, while the East Indian community are the ones who introduced I&I to this beautiful and sacred plant. Ganja was christened Cannabis sativa in 1753 by Carl Linnaeus. The problem of ganja was in 1889, a problem of law and its regulation as a commercial product. The Single Convention of 1961 was a modernizing legislation. The law itself proved serious evil. And that is the time that the East Indian community, the migrants, stopped planting, slowed down on the planting or cultivation of cannabis. The new legislature introduced into TT in 1899 brought the regulations of cannabis under the existing Opium License Ordinance. It prohibited the cultivation of ganja in the colony, but allowed its import under the system of license ordinance. Since ganja was exotic to Trinidad and Tobago because it was brought in by the East Indian migrants, rum was native to Trinidad and Tobago. Ganja was imported from India and retailed in specifically marked packages of specific size and weight under the opium license ordinance. Most of the ordinance in the time of the migrants by the Ministry of Health had been from 1885, 1899, and 1884. After the Single Convention of 1961, the East Indian migrants slowed down in the cultivation of ganja. This was a big shift, not due to any imminent danger or use, but because at that time, the cultural legitimacy of the plant species had been changed. The plant that the East Indians brought to us was known as Cannabis sativa. According to the Indians, marijuana was not ganja, and none of the old East Indian men knew what marijuana was. The term marijuana was an American term. Right? As you know, just as the Rastafari regard Haile Selassie I, King Rastafari, and Empress Menenai as our head, so too in Hinduism, the god Shiva is said to have brought ganja or cannabis from the Himalayas for human enjoyment and enlightenment. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna states, I am the healing herb. In conclusion, today, the Rastafari community, under the umbrella of the All Mansions of Rastafari, salute the East Indian community for the introduction of this sacred plant. And as such, we'd also like to welcome our working alliance to advocate for our cultural and our economic right under the sacramental bill so that we can establish our value brands. It is imperative that we work together to establish our brand value, for the wrongs we have both suffered under prohibition. Since it is Rastafari community that bore the brunt and brutality of the plant, let us share the opportunity to be in one for the love of humanity. I am my brother's keeper. I give thanks this afternoon for this forum. Blessed afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Halls. We really appreciate all the history that you shared behind the use of the plant in your community. And we were just taking questions from the audience. So at this point in time, I'd like to pose a question to you. What is happening now in terms of the legislation and the ability of the Rastafari community, or allowing for the Rastafari community to get some kind of economic benefit from the bill that is to be passed or has been passed going into law?
Apparently, we are seeing none. We have been given the right for sacramental use and sacramental dispensary. However, there is no commercial benefit to derive from it. And as you know, during our rituals, we use oils, we use incense, we use lotions, we use different things for our food that is being made from our plant. And at this point in time, due to the pandemic, most of our community had suffered great loss economically. And we had stood and borne the brutality of it. And I can assure you at this point in time, we are not seeing any form of commercial viability or commercial sustainability to the Rastafari movement. Hence the reason why today on this program, we are asking that, the community, which is the Asian community that had introduced it to the Western Hemisphere and had suffered together with us, we can no longer go back to the colonial masters and work for nothing, So we give thanks this evening for the joining together, because we are not seeing any improvement. We are just seeing such entities will be given to foreign entities. You can have sacramental just for your religious purpose, but you cannot derive any economic benefit from it, which is totally not good, because the cultural aspect of it is totally forsaken.
Right. Thank you very much for that response. We have a few members in the audience who are accusing us in the program of really using the session for the glorification and defense of marijuana rather than education. And I know that you missed most of the program, but I just want to confirm with you, do you think that the major benefit of the use of ganja in Trinidad and Tobago is economic, religious, or medicinal?
All three. To the Rastafari community, it has become food, clothes, and shelter. Today, when you look at it, many sciences have been proven where the ganja can have a lot of therapeutic values. Cancer patients, there are a lot of patients who are actually calling for it. A lot of people, diabetic patients, a lot of people who maybe don't understand it because they've never taken it. However, there is the cannabinoid part of it, which is called CBD, which is used for inflammation of the system and many other diseases. And then there is the psychoactive part of it, which is used for the things like cancer patients, the THC part, which is used for cancer patients and other patients that suffer with that Parkinson, that kind of patients that suffer from those kind of complaints. However, the dosing is everything. In any dose you're taking, we always start micro and advanced. And once you start micro, you would understand. I think, again, I would like to emphasize in all medications, especially like, like cannabis and ganja, ganja and these things, you always start at a low level. Information is the key in understanding what is CBD. There is no side effect from CBD since it is below 0.3%. So if I am to endorse a first-time patient who maybe suffer from a chronic disease or something, like arthritis or something, then I would recommend for them that they use no more than 5%. Since 3% is in hemp, which has no psychotic values, you would want to give them a little pep. So at least 5% would be just sufficient for them to really ease the pain and that kind of thing. So the whole chemistry is in terms of dosing. Again, we have understand that there were certain concerns about the neuroscience of it in terms of the brain and these things, everything. However, we know that the use of omega-3, niacin, and these things helps to clean the brain. So there are always ways in where you can take yourself, right, and to maintain the order of it, because your body has a natural cannabis receptors to handle that. So the key to it, my friends, is in dosing.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that clarification. Dr. Mahabir, you wanted to say something.
Yes, so I want to again remind listeners and viewers that I am a medical anthropologist, and my PhD dissertation is on postnatal care, and I contextualize in comparing the Western biomedical system with the traditional system of folk healers. So you cannot throw away marijuana, you cannot dismiss marijuana, that's throwing away the baby with the bathwater. There are pros and cons to two systems. Who said that Western medicine and biology and all the research and all the lab trials and so on, who said it doesn't have side effects? I am a living example. I took that vaccine, which is an experimental drug for COVID, and I am presently waiting on the results from the doctor. I have done several blood tests because all the joints in my body are suddenly painful. I can't even move. Side effects. You have side effects in Western medicine, right? And a lot of this is not coming out in the media. Why? Why? Who pays the media? The traditional healer can't pay the media. Folk healer cannot pay the media. It's the big pharma companies. It's business. So Jailal, I want to point out to you, when you're talking about making money and business, direct your question to the pharma companies. They pay for research. They may build a university. They may hire doctors. They have the media and education in their control. So what we're seeing on television, what we're reading in journals, peer-reviewed journals, right? Peer-reviewed journals, blind studies are often sponsored by the pharma companies. It's business. It's business we are talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mahabir. I just want to raise now a question that Dr. Sita Shah Roth has raised in the chat, and this is directed to JAVED BAKSH. She is asking, on your form, in addition to the medical history from their medical practitioner, you asked for family history. Can you explain how responses will inform on your choice of direct treatment, diagnosis, etc.? Javed?
Sorry, mic was muted there.
Okay.
So with genetic types of conditions, you usually find that they would require a little more intense of a dose to treat the issues, rather than somebody that developed a condition with no family history. So I found, and I'll give you an example. The clients I have with like rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, that have a family history of it, it has been a lot more difficult to treat using, well, compared to a lower dose to someone that has no family history of it, but developed it later on in their life. And I don't know if it's like a correlation across the board, but since I've been doing this, I've noticed as long as the condition is genetic, they usually require a little bit more intensive of a treatment.
Thank you. Dr. GOSINE, please go ahead.
Yes, I've been listening very attentively. So I think we need to kind of keep the big perspective here and all of this. I am both board certified, integrative endocrinologist, but I also have another center called Lotus Life, the Center for Holistic Health and Conscious Living. So I actually practice, I hate to say both, because in reality, health encompasses all of these things. They are different sides of the same coin. So here's the thing. I see actually the pros and cons of each of them. The issue about, big pharma and the things, all these things that we see, when I say they're true in the sense of, we don't want to have a system where it's being driven solely by financial, from a financial perspective, meaning it has to be based on, true health benefits. So we need to really be careful how we look at this. The first thing is we do need to have some medical and scientific, expertise. Why? Because I actually see patients who have come to me who have actually, been, suffered conditions, when we do blood tests, medical testing, by, claims that there's supplements, there are things that are being given to them, their liver function, kidney function, different comorbid medical conditions. All these things are not actually being monitored or looked at. So we do have to have a set of standardized something there, in terms of advanced medical science. That being said, advanced medical science is not sufficient to treat the whole human being. So point well taken on both sides. I think you do have to have in-depth and breadth medical expertise in what you're doing, because people's lives are in your hands and there are medical, ethical considerations that we need to uphold. My first oath as a physician is to do no harm. Unfortunately, I see a lot of things in my practice where, as an endocrinologist, because the endocrine system is the most sensitive system in any kind of substance that's being used, it's actually the most sensitive, the first system that goes haywire, so to speak. At the same time, I also know that what I have learned from all these years is lifestyle is the biggest issue that we're facing. There are people that want to live a neurotic lifestyle, but they're looking for a pill, a magic bullet, whether it's be from big pharma or it be from, one of the things we're discussing. I think we have to change our mindset and not have a dog in this fight, so to speak, meaning that we really do need to take a step back and know that at the end of the day, we're trying to treat patients. We're trying to treat people, whole human beings, medically, spiritually, in every possible way as human beings, and also to have an open mind. There are definite benefits to this, from the talks here and from, clinical trials of CBD, and a lot of promise as far as this is concerned. But we do need to understand that lifestyle, exercise, eating habits, stress management, these are big things in the neurohormonal control of the body and its effects. So we, in my last slide where I talked about, yes, there need to be some more, standardization of things, but we need to be careful when we sort of take sides. It's not about taking sides. It's not one or the other. It's actually both at the same time. So there's definite benefit from all these things. My center offers complementary treatments, but they're all medical professionals at the same time. You have to know what you're doing. And at the same time, I understand that traditional medicine may not be sufficient to treat these conditions. So we do have to keep that balance and keep that perspective and not have any biases in this discussion.
Thank you very much, Dr. GOSINE. So you've raised the idea of a hybrid. The best way to go, of course, as Bongo Grease was saying, you've got to know your dosages, very important. And you've got to be an educated client as well, because the more information you have, and the better you can explain to your practitioner, whether it is Western, an allopathic practitioner, or a traditional healer, you're better able to then get a good diagnosis and perhaps adequate treatment options.
Yes.
So that we do need to change our mindset. We can't say, well, this is the way it was done a long time, and therefore this is working for us, and we have to go that way. No, our situation is different now. But at the same time, we cannot dispose of what was used, what was tried, and what was tested. So we've got to find a way to incorporate them. And I want to thank you for that point.
You're welcome.
Great. There is a question in the chat, which I want to change around a little bit, and I want to address this to Dr. Nanda from Suriname. So the question has to do with, why do you have a drug test for employment if drugs were good for us? And I'm asking, in your psychiatry practice in Suriname, to what extent do you get clients who are addicted and has been trying to treat themselves out of the use of marijuana?
So to make it clear, please, could you what is the question again?
Okay. In your psychiatry practice, do you often have clients who have issues on the job because of their marijuana use? And having been tested, they are trying to wean themselves off of it.
Yes, when I see these clients, then you can imagine that it's in a fast, or the situation is very how you call it, in a critical fast, because like a psychiatrist, if someone is referred to me, then it's in a very critical situation. So they have tried a lot, but because of the addiction, because of the changes in the brain, and also the personality traits, how the person deals with problem, and all the other aspect, it is very complicated to treat this group. And I get frequently patients who are having problems with their work because they don't function. They are absent. They don't go to work. They are not functioning normally. They are aggressive on at their job, work, and place, and in their family. They are experiencing a lot of problems. So I get these clients a lot, but there is a little complicating factor. It's almost always a person with a dual diagnosis. Not only cannabis, but also other problems, mental issues. So it is very tough to treat these people. But if they have a cannabis problem only, then we can handle it. Yeah, it is the prognosis is better than if they have a dual diagnosis problem.
Okay, so thank you very much for that last point in particular. So if they have a cannabis problem, it is indeed treatable.
It is possible if they are willing to stop, if the motivation is intrinsic, if they believe that it's not helping him and they are helping them and they are getting more problems than benefits. If if they are aware and they are willing, then it will help. Yeah, but the most of my clients, they are in a denial. And the brain changes with chronic use of drugs, and it's a disease. Addiction is a disease, and it's a brain disease. So it is if they end up in an addiction situation, it is very tough. Yeah, my group has mostly a double diagnosis, dual diagnosis issues, and that makes it very hard for us to help them.
I see. And is marijuana used? Where are you all importing your items from? Are you manufacturing CBD oils, etc., or are you bringing this from the Netherlands?
Yeah, there are a few persons who make CBD oil or cannabis products, and most of it started with imports from Netherlands, Europe, and with the how you call it the cannabis industry. Yes, I have to say, yeah, the industry is making progress towards medicinal use. So there are a few persons who are making medicinal cannabis, CBD oils, yes.
Right, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Nanda. And I want to say thank you very much to all of our presenters today. Thank you so much, Dr. Mahabir, Dr. VITRA GOSINE, Mr. Bongo Grease. Thank you very much, JAVED BAKSH.
Shamila,
this has been this.
Shamila, I would like to say something. Shamila, I saw someone poses a question just now in terms of dopamine. And I would just like to tell the person who's posed the question that THC, the THC stimulates specific cannabinoids within the system, right? That increases and releases that release of dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that relates to feeling of pleasure.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that. Dr. GOSINE would have addressed dopamine quite extensively in her presentation. I wish you were here to experience the whole thing, but thank you for adding to it, Mr. Halls. So we appreciate all of your presentations today, and thank you very much for your time, your expertise, and your knowledge on this particular topic. I just want to say at this point, before I bring it to a close, that for those of you all who will be joining us on the tour, if you're not aware of our tour, we are asking everyone to join us in Trinidad and Tobago on August 4th to the 11th. And this is going to be the inaugural ICC Indian Diaspora Tour to Trinidad. We will be exploring different places of interest to the Indian community here. And hopefully JAVED will be able to accommodate some people for a visit. And we want to go possibly to Suriname next year. And Dr. Nanda will be calling on you. Hopefully we'll be able to see what's happening with this particular industry in Suriname at that time, and with specifically with respect to the Indian community. So for those of you who wanted to get information on the tour, please send us a message and we will be happy to comply. Once again, thank you very much for being here today and for participating. I'm Shalima Mohammed, and I will now close and hand you over to the chair, who is Janine Gilhari from Belize. Janine?
Unmute, Ravin. Can you unmute her? Right.
It wasn't allowing me to unmute. Sorry about
Yes.
that. But thank you, Shalima, for being an amazing moderator as always. Thank you to everybody who took the time to participate today, especially to the presenters. It's always greatly appreciated, and you always have so much insightful things to share with us. So it's always really nice. As was mentioned before, this is a public meeting being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. So please feel free to contact the ICC to publish your books and reports. Also, if you haven't already, give our Facebook page a like, share, follow. Send us your WhatsApps and emails so we can continue to build our database as well. Our topic next Sunday will be, what's the issue with non-English people's names? So another very interesting topic, and I'm sure that's going to bring a lot of discussion. So until next Sunday, I'm Jolene from Belize saying goodbye. May God bless you all. Nyahbinghi.
Thank you all for participating in whatever way. So Ravin is going to stop recording soon in a few minutes and stop the live stream, so you can talk off record. We can have a few minutes again before we finally wrap up. But